The bus dropped me off just after sunset on the edge of a small town called Briar Glen, somewhere deep in the mountains of West Virginia. I remember the driver looking at me through the mirror before I stepped off, like he wanted to say something but decided not to. The door folded shut, the bus pulled away, and the sound of the engine faded down the empty road until there was nothing left but the wind moving through the trees. I stood there alone with my backpack, staring at the narrow road that led uphill toward the place I had come to stay. The Briar Glen Travelers Hostel. I had found it online while looking for cheap places to stay during a cross-country trip. Most of the listings were motels or campsites, but this one caught my attention because it looked old. Not modern old, historic old. The picture showed a 3-story wooden building sitting in the woods, with a wraparound porch and tall windows that looked like they hadn't been replaced in 50 years. The price was cheap. Too cheap, honestly, but the reviews were strange more than bad. People said things like, "Quiet place, good if you don't mind the nights. Owner is nice, but the building feels wrong." One review just said, "Don't stay in roommate." No explanation. No reply from the owner. Just that. I should have taken that as a sign. Instead, I slung my backpack over my shoulder and started walking up the hill. The road curved through thick forest, the kind where the trees grow so close together the sky disappears between them. Pine and oak branches stretched over the gravel like fingers, blocking what little light the evening had left. It took me about 20 minutes to reach the hostel. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Not peaceful quiet, not the kind you get in the countryside. This was the kind of quiet where you realize you haven't heard a bird in a long time. The building stood at the end of the road, just like in the pictures. 3 stories tall, dark wood siding, paint peeling in long strips near the windows. A single yellow porch light hung above the front door, flickering every few seconds like it couldn't decide whether to stay on. There were no cars in the driveway, no voices, no movement behind the windows. For a moment, I thought the place might be closed. Then the front door opened by itself. At least that's what it looked like at first. A second later, an old man stepped out onto the porch. He was tall, thin, with gray hair pulled back into a short ponytail and a beard that looked like it hadn't been trimmed in months. He wore a flannel shirt and suspenders, and he held the door open with one hand while staring at me like he'd been expecting me. "You must be Daniel," he said. His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. "Yeah," I said. "I booked online." He nodded slowly, then stepped aside. "Come on in. It's cold fast up here after dark." The inside of the hostel smelled like old wood and dust. Not dirty, just old. Like the place had been standing longer than anyone alive. There was a front desk to the right, a staircase straight ahead, and a long hallway leading toward what looked like a kitchen. A small lamp sat on the desk, casting a yellow circle of light across a thick notebook. The old man walked behind the desk and flipped it open. "Sign here," he said. "Just the name and date." I picked up the pen. There were only 3 names on the page before mine. 3, for a place with 10 rooms. That seemed strange. "You don't get many guests?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Not this time of year." I signed my name and slid the book back. He closed it slowly, then reached under the desk and pulled out a metal key with a wooden tag. "Roommate." For a second I thought I read it wrong. I looked again. My stomach tightened a little, but I told myself I was being stupid. It was just a number. He held the key out to me, but didn't let go right away. His eyes met mine. "You here alone?" he asked. "Yeah." He kept holding the key. "You planning to stay long?" "Just a few nights." He finally released it. "All right then," he said quietly. "The room's upstairs. End of the hall. Bathroom shared. Kitchen's open if you need food." I nodded. Then he added something that made my skin crawl. "If you hear knocking at night," he said, "don't open the door." I laughed a little, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. He just stood there, staring at me, waiting for me to respond. "Okay," I said. He nodded once, like that settled it, then turned away and started writing in the notebook again. I took my backpack and went upstairs. The staircase creaked with every step. At the top was a long hallway with doors on both sides, each one marked with a small brass number. 1, 2, 3, 4. On the other side, 5, 6, 7, 8. Room 8 was at the very end, right next to a window that looked out into the forest. The hallway light above the door flickered the same way the porch light had. I stood there for a moment, listening. Nothing. No voices. No footsteps. No TV sounds. Just the faint hum of the old building settling in the cold. I unlocked the door and went inside. The room was bigger than I expected. A single bed against the wall, a wooden dresser, a chair near the window, and a small lamp on a nightstand. Everything looked clean but old, like it hadn't changed since the 1970s. I set my backpack down, turned on the lamp, and sat on the bed. The mattress springs groaned under my weight. For a while I just sat there, listening to the wind outside. Then I noticed something. Scratches on the inside of the door. Long, thin scratches running from the handle down toward the floor. Not deep enough to break the wood, but deep enough to leave marks. Like someone had been clawing at the door from inside the room. I stared at them for a long time. Then I told myself it was nothing. Old building, old wood. People drag luggage, move furniture, things get scratched. That's all. I got up, closed the door, and locked it. I wish I hadn't, because around midnight the knocking started. 3 slow taps, right on the door. I froze in bed, staring at the ceiling. Talp, talp, talp. I sat up, heart pounding. At first I thought it might be the owner, or another guest. But then I remembered what he said. If you hear knocking at night, don't open the door. The knocking came again, this time louder. Talp, talp, talp. I got out of bed and walked toward the door without thinking. The scratches were right in front of my face now. Long, thin, too straight to be an accident. Another knock, right next to my hand. I stopped. Something felt wrong. Not scary. Wrong. Like the air on the other side of the door didn't belong there. Then a voice spoke. Soft. Right outside. Open the door. It sounded like a woman. Very quiet. Almost whispering. Please. I need help. My hand was on the lock. I almost turned it. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The voice wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from the other side of the door. From inside the room. Right behind me. I turned slowly, every muscle in my body tight, like if I moved too fast something would grab me. The room looked the same as before. The bed, the dresser, the chair near the window. Nothing there. For a moment I thought I imagined it. Then the knocking came again. But this time, it wasn't on the door. It came from the wall behind the bed. 3 slow taps. Talp, talp, Halt! I took a step back without meaning to. The lamp on the nightstand flickered once, then steadied, but the light looked dimmer than before. Like the room itself was getting darker. The voice came again. Closer now. Open the door. My throat went dry. I didn't knock. I whispered, even though I didn't know who I was talking to. Silence. Then the voice changed. It sounded wrong now. Not like a woman anymore. Not like anything human. Let me out. Something moved behind the bed. Not fast. Slow. Like weight shifting against the wall. I grabbed the lamp and pointed it toward the corner. Nothing. But the scratching sound started again. The same sound I saw on the door. Clawing. From inside the wall. I backed toward the door, not taking my eyes off the bed. The knocking started again. This time on the door for real. Loud. Hard. Bang. 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 I jumped and turned around. Someone was in the hallway. I could hear the old man's voice. Don't open it, he shouted. The banging stopped instantly. The silence that followed felt heavier than the noise. I stood there, frozen, staring at the door, waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. After a few seconds, I heard footsteps outside, walking away slowly down the hallway. Then the floor creaked near the stairs. Then nothing. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the bed with my back against the wall, the lamp on, watching the door until the light outside the window started to turn gray. When morning finally came, I opened the door carefully. The hallway was empty. The light above room 8 was still flickering. I went downstairs with my backpack already on, not even sure if I was leaving or just needed to talk to someone. The old man was in the kitchen, pouring coffee into a metal mug. He didn't look surprised to see me. You heard it, he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. He pushed the mug toward me. See, I didn't want coffee, but my hands were shaking, so I sat anyway. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, "What is in that room?" He took a slow drink, then set the mug down. That building, it was a boarding house before it was a hostel, he said. Back in the 1930s. Railroad workers stayed here. Loggers too. People passing through. He rubbed his beard, staring at the table like he'd told this story too many times. One winter, a woman stayed in room 8, traveling alone. Said she was heading west. He paused. She started telling people something was knocking on her door at night. Every night. Same time. I felt my stomach tighten. What happened to her? I asked. He looked up at me. They found the door locked from the inside. Window closed. No sign she left. He tapped the table with one finger. But the scratches were there. On the inside of the door. Same as now. Cold ran down my back. So, where did she go? He shook his head slowly. Never found her. The kitchen felt colder than the night before. I swallowed. And the knocking? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood up and walked to the window, looking out toward the trees behind the hostel. When they cleaned the room, they found something inside the wall. He turned back toward me, a space that wasn't on the building plans. Small, just big enough for someone to crawl into. My hands tightened around the mug. What was in it? He stared at me for a long time before speaking. Nothing. Silence filled the kitchen. Then he added quietly, but sometimes at night, you can hear something moving in there. I stood up so fast the chair scraped across the floor. I'm leaving, I said. He nodded like he expected that. Most people did, I guess. I walked outside without finishing the coffee, without checking out, without even asking about the payment. The morning air was freezing, but it felt good compared to that building. I started down the road toward town, not looking back. Halfway down the hill I stopped. Not because I wanted to, because I heard something. 3 taps. Talp, talp, talp. I turned slowly. The hostel stood at the top of the hill, silent, the porch light still flickering even in daylight. For a second I thought I imagined the sound. Then I saw the window at the end of the second floor hallway. Roommate. Something moved behind the glass. Not a person. Too tall, too thin, just standing there, watching. I ran the rest of the way to town and never went back. Later, when I tried to look up the place online, the listing was gone. No website, no photos, no reviews, nothing. I even asked people in Briar Glen about the Travelers Hostel. Most of them just shook their heads. One old woman at the gas station finally said, "That place up the hill." She looked at me for a long time before speaking again. They keep reopening it every few years. New owner, new name, same building. She leaned closer across the counter. And every time, someone stays in the wrong room. She didn't smile. There's always a roommate,